Oh my goodness. Let me tell you about the day I looked into my daughter's eyes and saw something that just broke my heart clean in two. A living grave. That's what it was. With my vibrant Emily trapped somewhere behind all that terror and whatever drugs they'd been giving her. And that's when I knew, deep in my bones, that the ground beneath Henri Dubois and his whole monstrous family was going to open up and swallow every last one of them whole. Now, before I get too deep into this story, I'd love to know where you're all listening from today. Drop me a comment and let me know, won't you? And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. It's completely free, and it truly helps us keep bringing you more stories like this one. I really do appreciate it. All right then, let me tell you who I am. I'm Margaret Patterson, a retired high school English teacher from Cleveland, Ohio, been teaching literature for more years than I care to count. And I was a single mother who poured every ounce of her being into raising my brilliant, beautiful Emily. Oh, that girl was something else. Summa cum laude, could speak 3 languages like she was born to them, and had a heart every bit as big as her mind, you know. We had ourselves a good life, simple but rich in all the ways that mattered, filled with love and laughter, and those long talks over dinner about books and dreams and everything in between. Now, 6 years ago, when Emily met this Henri Dubois, charming fellow, I'll give him that, French aristocrat with all the right words and manners, during her study abroad program. Well, I was cautiously optimistic, the way any mother would be, I suppose. He swept her right off her feet, with promises of this grand life in some chateau in Lyon. And when I visited once, early on, the place was so fancy it nearly took my breath away, though I'll admit it felt a bit cold for my taste. But Emily seemed happy enough, if maybe a little distant. The emails that came after, though, they started getting strange. Really strange. Short little things, nothing like my chatty Emily who used to write me these long, wonderful letters about everything and nothing. And the video calls? Lord, those were even worse. Always so brief. And she'd angle the camera just so, never showing her whole face. And her eyes would dart around like she was looking for something, or maybe someone. She'd play these old folk songs in the background sometimes, specifically that version of Scarborough Fair that she knew I loved from when she was little. And it struck me as odd, completely out of character for the sophisticated life she was supposed to be living. I kept telling myself it was just the demands of her new life. You know how it is with in-laws and such, especially that mother-in-law of hers, Marguerite, who had a reputation for being about as warm as a winter morning. But this knot in my stomach just kept getting tighter and tighter. Then last year, my dear sister passed away so suddenly it left me reeling. But she left me a modest inheritance. Nothing fancy, mind you, but enough to make what I guess you'd call an impulse decision. That nagging feeling about Emily had turned into a roaring alarm in my head, and my sister's death taught me that life's too short for regrets, too precious to leave questions hanging in the air like that. So I booked myself a flight to France. Didn't tell anyone I was coming, just went. The Dubois Chateau was exactly as magnificent as I remembered. This sprawling stone castle draped in ivy, like something out of a fairy tale, nestled in those rolling hills outside Lyon. But now it felt cold, oppressive, like the walls themselves were keeping secrets. Henri met me at the door, dressed to perfection as always, kissed my hand, and murmured all the right condolences about my sister. But those startling blue eyes of his seemed to be weighing and measuring me like I was livestock at auction. Emily, he explained with that practiced smoothness of his, had a delicate constitution and was resting. And right then I knew something was terribly, horribly wrong, because my Emily was never delicate. She was vibrant and strong and full of life, a real force of nature. I waited until late that night, when the whole place was quiet except for the creaks of old wood and some owl hooting in the distance. Then I slipped out of my room and went looking for her. What I found... Oh, honey, what I found in those servants' quarters will haunt me till my dying day. There was my brilliant, beautiful Emily on her hands and knees, scrubbing at some stain on the stone floor, her hair all dull and matted, her face so thin she looked like a stranger, with this awful purple bruise under her left eye and her wrist wrapped up in a dirty bandage. Her pupils were these tiny little pinpricks, and her hands were shaking, and when she looked up at me, those beautiful brown eyes, I knew better than my own, held such profound, heartbreaking terror. No recognition at all, just this blank, drugged stare. "Emily," I whispered, and she flinched like I'd struck her, tried to go back to her scrubbing like my very presence was dangerous, and in that moment, my whole world just shattered into a million pieces. This wasn't my daughter. This was a ghost, a prisoner, and the betrayal burned in my chest hotter than any rage I'd ever felt. But you know what? That heartbreak became a furnace, forging something in me that was cold and sharp and utterly ruthless, and the gentle English teacher just evaporated, replaced by something that surprised even me. I'd been quietly collecting information for the past 3 years, you see. Those strange emails and the Scarborough Fair signals had sparked my suspicions, not just about Emily, but about how the Dubois family had suddenly come into all this wealth. Started small, just a retired teacher with too much time and a Google search, researching their business dealings, looking for things that didn't quite add up. And what I found was this maze of shell companies and offshore accounts that didn't match their declared assets at all. With Inspector Claire Rousseau's help, a woman who'd been investigating disappearances of foreign women that kept getting hushed up, I managed to get Emily out of that place under the pretense of urgent medical care. And slowly, so slowly, tiny sparks of her former self began to appear. One afternoon, she looked at me with sudden clarity and whispered, "Scarborough, Mama, Scarborough." And then she told me about her safety deposit box in Geneva, fingerprint activated with a weekly password that only she knew, set up so that if anything happened to her, all the evidence she'd been gathering would automatically go to international NGOs and journalists. My clever, strategic Emily had been fighting back even in captivity, documenting everything she could. The picture that emerged as we worked with Inspector Rousseau was absolutely terrifying. An international trafficking network run not by crude thugs, but by sophisticated, powerful people, with Henri and Marguerite as just one hub, and this elegant woman named Catherine Beaumont as the facilitator. When we finally cornered Catherine in that stark conference room in Geneva, she tried her cold, moral blackmail, threatening other women if Emily's evidence came to light. But she underestimated this old English teacher who'd spent 3 years tracking their money. I laid out my financial investigation like a roadmap of their greed. And while she thought she held all the cards, we'd already raided 14 safe houses and rescued 47 women, watching her elegant mask crack with the realization that her empire was crumbling. But Catherine led us to the real monster, Jean-Claude Marot, a member of the European Parliament who'd been running this network for over 40 years, and the plan we hatched to take him down at that opera gala in Vienna was audacious and dangerous, with Emily going undercover while I watched from the wings, my heart in my throat. When she pretended to have pacemaker troubles and got him talking freely, boasting about his connections and operations, I knew we had him. And when I burst through those doors with Interpol right behind me, shouting, "Jean-Claude Marot, you're under arrest," the look on his face was worth everything we'd been through. The whole thing came crashing down. Henri and Marguerite got life sentences. Catherine faced even more charges. Marot's political immunity couldn't save him from the mountain of evidence we'd built, and over 800 women were rescued from various stages of that network. My life changed forever after that. No going back to the quiet garden and classroom. Not after seeing such evil and learning I had the strength to fight it. Emily joined Interpol, and they asked me to join too. Saw something in this methodical old teacher with her financial detective work and unwavering resolve. So now, we're a team. Emily heading field operations while I lead the financial analysis. And it's not the peaceful retirement I once imagined, but it's a life reclaimed, built on justice and the knowledge that no criminal is beyond reach and no victim beyond saving. And if that isn't worth fighting for, well, I don't know what is.